A dangerous weekend is shaping up, especially across Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois, with tornadoes, damaging winds, and flash flooding all on the table. Storms have already wreaked damage across the northern plains this week, and the atmosphere is reloading. Over the last 48 hours, we have seen significant wind reports and widespread thunderstorm clusters across the Dakotas and into parts of Nebraska. These storms were associated with the first of a line of shortwave troughs that have moved out of the Rockies, and we are not done yet. This setup is being driven by high pressure that is anchored in the southwest and a persistent trough across the north-central United States. As we look at the 500 millibar level, we see the shortwave trough ejecting out of Nebraska. This is going to be the focus for our storms on our Friday afternoon. But right above it, through the Dakotas, Saturday afternoon into Saturday evening, we see yet another trough making its way into Minnesota and the UP of Michigan. We look at the jet stream level and we see a similar thing. Here's that little buckle that's going to instigate the storms on our Friday. But look at this deepening trough across the Dakotas. By the time we get to Saturday morning, it is almost vertical. But by the time we get to the afternoon, it takes a negative tilt. And when troughs at this level take a negative tilt, they are intensifying. So we believe heavy storms will be possible across parts of Ontario into the UP Saturday into Sunday. And then we watch yet another wave make its way Saturday evening into Monday morning. As we begin our Friday, we're watching the remnants of storms that have moved out of the plains overnight through Iowa into Illinois. Those are now moving off. They are not severe. We're watching a little bit of showers across parts of Minnesota and Ontario. Out across the east, where we've seen significant rain over the last 48 hours, everything is moving offshore. And here across the southwest, we still have that high pressure. But as we go into the middle of the day, we're going to watch for storms to fire across parts of Missouri, Iowa, into Illinois. And we're going to break down why these storms are going to be as severe as we believe them to be. We're also watching that trough digging across the Dakotas. Here we can kind of see the center of the low pressure as it makes its way across the Canadian border. And so when we look at the radar for our Friday, this is early in the morning. These are the storms that I'm talking about. They're going to make their way through overnight Thursday into Friday morning. They're going to die out. But we're going to start watching here across Iowa in the afternoon by 10, 11 a.m. We start to see storms going. And if we see discrete supercells forming, which this map wants to do by 2, 3 in the afternoon, we see them across southwestern Iowa into eastern Iowa. If they stay discrete, this will be the key to tornadic thunderstorms across eastern Iowa into northwestern Illinois. But by evening, by 8, 9, 10 o'clock, we do expect that to form into a line. So let's look at the significant tornado parameter across this area. This gives us an indication of where we might see tornadoes. When we start to see these grays turn into some blues, that's an indication of an area of possible tornadoes for our Friday. This is about 1 in the afternoon. That then shifts as we start to look here across eastern Iowa into northern Illinois as we get to 5, 6 in the evening. As these storms make their way towards the Chicagoland area, we're going to watch the northern part of Illinois for some tornado development. In fact, the atmosphere is going to be extremely primed for this type of storm development because we see CAPE values by the early afternoon surging to 2,000, 3,000 joules per kilogram. We even see some purples here indicating 4,000 or higher joules per kilogram. So we're going to watch for severe storms to start forming, and those are all going to make their way east by the time we get to our Friday evening. The Storm Prediction Center has gone ahead, and they've highlighted an area from central Kansas through eastern Nebraska through most of Iowa for our Friday for the chance of severe thunderstorms. This is a slight risk. We do expect that later in the day that the Storm Prediction Center will go ahead and upgrade most of Iowa into far western Illinois into an enhanced risk. The reason we think that is right now they've already placed a 2% chance of tornadoes forming somewhere across Iowa into northwestern Illinois. I wouldn't be surprised later in the day on Friday that we see this bumped up to a 5% chance. We're not really expecting a lot of hail with these storms, though you could see that back through Kansas, and that's why that area is included in that slight chance of severe weather. With that next trough, we're already seeing hail across North Dakota and northern Minnesota as well as that next system starts to dive in. But the main event with these storms as they move out of the central plains through Iowa into Illinois is going to be the strong winds, 60 to 70 miles per hour. We could see this go into a hatched area during the day on Friday. And again, a lot's going to be dependent upon what kind of storm mode these cells remain in. If they stay discrete, that's going to help fuel and increase the level of severity. If they congeal into a line, that energy is then spread out across the whole line of the storms, and so that energy is a lot less. The risk of severe weather, of tornadoes, is also much less. But as we go into Saturday, right now we have marginal risk across Texas and New Mexico for severe weather, and with that negatively tilted trough across parts of Ontario, we're keeping the upper parts of Michigan and Wisconsin in that marginal risk of severe weather. The other big story with these storms as they move through is going to be the excessive amount of through central Iowa, northwest Illinois, into southern Michigan, we could see widespread 1 to 2 inches. But in those heavier thunderstorms, we could see 2 to 4 inches. And we even have an area here in excess of 6 to possibly as much as 8 inches of rain across northwestern Illinois. The problem with forecasting extreme amounts of rainfall with these weather models is that it's hard to pinpoint exactly where the heaviest rain or that axis is going to set up. A lot depends on the training. Do storms go over the same area hour after hour? Or is there wobbling in the storm track? Is there a general push of the whole line to the east? All of that plays into how we think the rainfall will pan out. In fact, if we look at the European model, it is less aggressive across parts of northwestern Illinois. Generally 2 to 3 inches is likely. They have the heaviest axis of rain across parts of west central and central Iowa. That's where we could see 3 to 5 inches of rain. They're not as extreme in their totals either. We don't see those 6 and 8 inch amounts across Iowa, but a general 2 to 4 inches is likely. And as that rain gets into Michigan, again, 1 to 2 inches. So we're just going to have to watch to see which model plays out. I am leaning more toward the GFS model right now, but again, we'll see how this develops. The other big story is the heat, because right now the Southwest continues to bake. Phoenix, Las Vegas, you are 115 degrees plus for your Thursday. We're going to see a slight retreat in our temperatures, 105 to 110, but that's still very warm for this time of the year. And even across the Central Plains, the temperatures are roasting. Where those storms are making their way across the Dakotas, temperatures here are going to be held down in the 60s and 70s. Same as through Iowa and Wisconsin. But out ahead of it, we have plenty of warmth that's helping to fuel and provide the energy for these thunderstorms as they move through. Temperatures here in the 80s and 90s. And as we go to our Saturday, again with that second trough moving through, temperatures across the upper Midwest are going to be held down into the 70s, but we're already watching warming across eastern Montana with highs in the low 90s. Out across the deserts, you're still staying in the 105 to 115. Even the interior of California, you are in triple digits. Across the south, we're in the 90s, generally with afternoon scattered thunderstorms likely, and that continues into our weekend. Now we will see that rainfall making its way into the lower Ohio Valley for our Sunday. This is going to help keep temperatures down in the 70s and 80s. But already we're building another warming pattern across the Central Plains with the Dakotas into the mid-90s. Even parts of eastern Montana and central Montana, you could be approaching triple digits for your Sunday. Southern Idaho into eastern Washington, as well as eastern Oregon, you're staying relatively warm. Well, what's causing all of this warmth to happen? This is the 500 millibar map. And what we see is this area of high pressure, which was over the Four Corners region, is retrograding a little bit further to the west. We see that with the contour circles of 594 decameters. So as that continues to move west in a retrograde pattern, which is not normal, we're going to get around that high pressure clockwise rotation. That's, as you see with these wind barbs, it's going to help pull a little bit of air off of the ocean, which is cooler air. So that's why we're not going to see the 115, 120 degree temperatures. When the high pressure was more over land, high pressure causes air to sink and compress at the surface, and compressed air tends to heat up. And so that was helping to fuel the intense heat wave that we saw across the Southwest over the last several days. But we are watching that to change. And that's good news because the areas of the Southwest through southwestern New Mexico, southern Arizona into southern California, you are under an extreme drought based upon the latest drought monitor that was issued on our Thursday morning. But we're also watching areas here across northern Illinois into northern Indiana, even into eastern Iowa. You are abnormally dry or under a moderate drought situation. So we're going to watch for that rainfall that's going to be moving through over this weekend. We hope that it's steadier rain, not a flash flooding rain that just runs off, because we need that steady soaking types of rains to help alleviate these drought conditions. But our thinking is it's going to be heavy amounts of rain in a short amount of time. And so that's really not going to help alleviate a lot of that situation here. And across Texas, where we've seen that flooding over the last several days, while it has helped alleviate some of the drought conditions across parts of Texas, unfortunately, it has claimed well over 100 lives, many people still missing. Thoughts and prayers do go out to those first responders and all those impacted by the flooding across Texas. As we look at our temperatures across the northern plains for our Saturday, as I said, it's 80s generally across the area, warming to the 90s, even some isolated 100s across parts of South Dakota for our Sunday. So as we watch the precipitation over the next several days, we watch that first line and that trough move through Saturday morning, but the rest of the weekend is generally dry across the Dakotas into Minnesota. We will watch some showers forming on our Sunday afternoon as they make their way into Wisconsin. In terms of precipitation, amounts are generally going to be light, generally less than 1/4 of an inch across most of Minnesota. Where we see that trough becoming negatively tilted across parts of Ontario, that is where we think the heaviest amounts of rainfall will fall by our Sunday morning. We could see 1 to 2 inches of rain here. And across parts of Iowa into Illinois, we could see 1 to 3, possibly 4 inches of rain by the time we get to Sunday morning. As we look across the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes for our Friday, temperatures are generally in the 80s across Illinois, Indiana, and back into Missouri, 70s to the north. As we make our way to our Saturday, those temperatures with the added cloud cover and the storm front moving through, it will keep temperatures a little bit lower in the 70s and 80s. Those 90s will be pushed well to the south and out to the east across Ohio. And as we make our way into our Sunday, it's a generally cooler pattern, about 5 degrees to 10 degrees below seasonal norms across most of this area, temperatures in the 70s, but out across the Dakotas into Nebraska, we already see signs of warming into next week. And here come those storms through our Friday. They make their way through Friday afternoon into Friday night. And then by Saturday, we do have some lingering showers across Indiana, down through Kentucky and Ohio for our Sunday. And in terms of our rainfall over the next several days, generally it's where we see the heaviest amounts of rain for our Friday. 2 to 4 inches are likely, with some isolated 6-inch amounts across parts of eastern Iowa into western Illinois. Across the mid-Atlantic region, where you've seen heavy amounts of rain from Delaware into New Jersey down through Maryland and Virginia, temperatures are generally going to be in the low 90s for your Friday. As we make our way to our Saturday, it's a great day for you to get out towards those beaches, especially down through North Carolina and South Carolina, where temperatures will be in the mid to upper 90s for your Saturday. And it's almost a repeat again of Sunday. We start to see some cooler air making its way through the Ohio Valley on our Sunday. That won't quite reach the East Coast. It will actually stay pretty warm as we go into next week. But in terms of precipitation, where you've seen the excessive flooding here across the mid-Atlantic region, the real heavy precipitation is going to be driven by those afternoon thunderstorms, where we could see isolated 1-inch amounts. But most areas will receive less than 1/4 of an inch by the time we get to our Sunday morning. And across the Southwest, the temperature has been the talk of the town here. Friday, we still will see temperatures in those deserts, 110, 115, 105 plus in the interior of California. A little bit of moderation for our Saturday, especially across the deserts, more 105 to 110 as that high pressure continues to retrograde out over to Southern California. And for our Sunday, we're going to see a little bit of cooling. Again, 105, 110. Las Vegas, you're still checking in at 110. And in terms of our precipitation, it is really non-existent over the Southwest over the next 72 hours. Well, let's look into next week. So this is the 500 millibar anomaly map. We're going to watch a trough that's going to dig across the Pacific Northwest as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to have another little energy that's going to make its way into Oklahoma that could provide some storms across the Central Plains into the Ohio Valley as we go Tuesday and Wednesday. But this trough is the more significant one that we are watching. As we get into our Thursday, into our Friday, it could bring another round of significant storms across the northern plains into the upper Great Lakes as we approach next weekend. This is still about 7 days away. A lot could change. But my eyes also turn to that next trough way off the Pacific Northwest. And as we get into that third week of July, a big ridge is going to form over the central United States. And that is the pattern that's going to set up that ring of fire, like we saw toward the end of June, where we had a trough in the west, trough in the northeast, and exceptionally warm and hot, humid conditions over the central United States. In terms of the tropics, nothing is really going on out there. We don't expect any tropical development over the next 7 days in the Atlantic. And as we get into that third weekend of July, into that third week, centered around the 18th through the 24th, much of the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes are going to experience below normal temperatures during this time period. The warmth is going to be out west, down across Texas, and the far northeast. And in terms of our precipitation, anywhere from the Tennessee Valley down across the Dixie Alley, up into the mid-Atlantic, even up into Massachusetts, you're going to see above normal precipitation. The upper Great Lakes continuing with that above normal precipitation, but this could be some good sign for the desert Southwest and the Four Corners region. We are expecting above normal precipitation from the 18th to the 24th. So here's the bottom line. Friday's tornado threat is there, especially from Iowa to Illinois. Flooding is a concern from Kansas City up towards Chicago. Heat will remain out across the desert Southwest for this coming weekend. And as we begin next week, the pattern reloads again. We'll have another video update on our Monday. But have a great weekend, and we will see you again on Monday.